and items used on it over the years. Despite being a Pokemon that was introduced in Generation 2, a Pokemon that you would certainly have expected to get power crept by now, it's still winning regionals. Still winning regionals as recently as last year, and I'm sure it will continue winning regionals in the future. Surrender's also funny because it kind of has no competition. If you think about Sun and Rain, like, of course you have Pokemon like Torkoal and Politoed can set up the rain. You also have Ninetales and Pelipper. Most of the other weather conditions have kind of multiple valid setters that you can use, or at least many of them do. Sun and Rain are the main weather conditions that I associate with competitive Pokemon, where you have like the main ones of Torkoal and Pelipper. You'll occasionally see the other like kind of second string ones of Politoed and Ninetales. But then you have like Groudon and Kyogre, and now you have Koraidon as well. But if you think about Sand, there's no second place. Like you have Tyranitar, who's obviously number one, and then you have like Hippowdon and Jigglypuff. Like nobody uses these Pokemon except in 2017 when Jigglypuff was used a little bit, but like that's because Tyranitar wasn't around. Anyway, Tyranitar just has such incredible stats, such incredible move pool, not incredible typing, it's really bad, such an incredible ability, and actually it always seems to benefit from the signature mechanic of every generation, being Mega Evolution or Z moves or even Terastallization. Not so much Dynamax, but I'm sure Dynamax Tyranitar are placed a little bit, right? It's one of the best Pokemon of all time, period. I don't think I need to convince anybody that Tyranitar is good. It's certainly one of the best Dark types, probably the second best. But of course, we all know who the best Dark type Pokemon is, right? I mean, you probably knew when you clicked on this video. There's no use beating around the bush. The best Dark type Pokemon is Terra Dark Incineroar. Without the Terra Dark, just Incineroar generally. Listen, it's a running joke on the channel that Incineroar is the best Pokemon of all time, and it's not exactly a well-kept secret. I actually already talked about how good Incineroar is in this video alone. You probably don't need me to sit here and explain to you why it's so good, but in case you missed it, here's the quick version. Incredible ability, ridiculous move pool, insane typing, unbelievable stats. It's the best support Pokemon the game has ever seen, and that makes it the best Pokemon the game has ever seen. When an offensive Pokemon is the best in the game, it's somewhat easy to counter them. When you think about Xerneas' dominance, like people would run super bulky and slow steel types with Gyro Ball, like Bronzong or Stakataka. But when a support Pokemon is really good, it's never the Pokemon doing the damage. It's never the Pokemon that's the focal point. It's the Pokemon enabling the other Pokemon. Ultimately, Pokemon is a game about damage, and so you need to deal with your opponent's damage in some way in order to win. Incineroar isn't doing the damage, it's just enabling it. And so part of the reason it's been able to like be on top for so long is because it never makes sense to hard counter, because of course if your team matches up really well with Incineroar, but you dedicate too many resources to beating it, then you won't have the ability to deal with the other Pokemon that are actually doing the damage, and therefore Incineroar will still be doing its job by making your team weaker and allowing for the actual threats to do the damage. And so Incineroar will still be doing its job, but just not by being on the field and slowing you down, but by affecting your team building and making it so that you don't have adequate answers to the actual threats. Incineroar is a 3-time world champion, and it's only been legal for 4 different world championships. Last year was the first year where Incineroar failed to win the world championship since becoming legal with Intimidate. The most messed up thing about Incineroar is the fact that they continue to buff it. There was a time where it couldn't learn knockoff until pretty late in a generation when certain move tutors were added. In the beginning of Scarlet and Violet, it could just learn knockoff from the get-go. Initially, when Incineroar was introduced, it had to use the move U-turn if it wanted to switch out. Then in Generation 8, they gave it Parting Shot, which is just an upgraded version of U-turn most of the time. In Generation 9, they gave it access to Helping Hand, which, as of the time I'm recording this, just got second at international level events. They have tried to add counterplay to Incineroar. I think the items Clear Amulet and Covert Cloak were added in large part to help slow Incineroar down. And to their credit, it has slowed Incineroar down. There was a period in the past where Incineroar was on like 75% of team, and it's not getting there at the moment, but you never know in the future. In my opinion, Incineroar is the best Pokemon of all time. So as a Dark type, it of course had to hold the #1 slot. Thank you for watching, truly. I hope you all have enjoyed watching these best Pokemon of every type videos. They've really been a lot of fun for me to make. I have some ideas of my own for future series, but if you have your ideas, feel free to leave large part because of its flexibility. Gigantamax Charizard really needs the Dynamax to be strongest, and Primal Groudon takes one of a team's 2 restricted slots. Incineroar could be put on any team with any Pokemon and help them shine. And in the end, that was the deciding factor.
Everyone checking the radar. Stay with it. It yet could be a completely different outcome in this race.
Weather, how's that looking?
There are some pockets of rain a few kilometres away from the track we're monitoring.
Going to try and keep Max Verstappen out as long as possible. You don't want to come in for a tyre stop and then have to come in but for, you know, a wet or an inter.
And weather update, maybe spots for the next couple of minutes, just spots.
Maybe drops of rain around turn 6 to turn 8. Only spots. But just be careful with your board size.
Give me informing, 50 anyone going wide.
Copy that.
So Verstappen has mentioned a bit of rain, small spots of rain, turn 6 to 8.
And the threat of rain is growing.
So there is a growing chance of rain. It will hit turn 5, turn 6 area first. So we need to keep these tyres hot.
Yeah, 6 in turn 3. What do you want to do with the safety car?
There you see it on the visor, on the driver's eye view in the visor, a little bit of water that was running down Max Verstappen's visor. That's turn 3 and 4 there as we drop down into the middle.
Obviously, when we clear those guys, I think it's safer to stop anyway. Even in case of rainy thing, it's a roller.
Yeah, copy that, copy. Green. Hold your that ice.
Verstappen comes now down into the back. He's still middle sector though, it looks pretty competitive. It's not slowing him down. The amount of rain there was just more visual than necessarily anything on grip.
The radar. Stay with it. It yet could be a completely different outcome in this race.
Weather, how's that looking?
There are some pockets of rain a few kilometres away from the track we're monitoring.
They're going to try and keep Max Verstappen out as long as possible. You don't want to come in for a tyre stop and then have to come in but for, you know, a wet or an inter.
And weather update, maybe spots for the next couple of minutes, just spots.
Maybe drops of rain around turn 6 to turn 8. Only spots. But just be careful with your worn tyres.
Keep me informed if you see anyone going wide.
Copy that.
So Verstappen has mentioned a bit of rain, small spots of rain, turn 6 to 8.
And the threat of rain is growing.
So there is a growing chance of rain. It will hit turn 5, turn 6, that area first. So we need to keep these tyres hot.
Yeah, it's in turn 3. Have a think what you want to do with the safety car.
There you see it on the visor, on the driver's eye view in the visor, a little bit of water that was running down Max Verstappen's visor. That's turn 3 and 4 there as we drop down into the Mirabo.
Obviously, when we clear those guys, I think it's safer to stop anyway. Even in case of rainy, I think fresh rubber.
Yeah, copy that phone.
Visor, that's turn 3 and 4 there as we drop down into the Mirabo.
Obviously, when we clear those guys, I think it's safer to stop anyway. Even in case of rainy, I think fresh rubber.
Yeah, copy that phone. Copy. We agree. And we'll just build up on pace.
Verstappen comes now down into Tabac. He's still middle sector though, it looks pretty competitive. It's not slowing him down. The amount of rain there was just more visual than necessarily anything on grip on the track at the moment.
Yeah, it's raining more and more.
Okay, there are pretty big spots for you.
Okay, understood.
Be ready.
It's raining. Turn 8. It's probably getting wet.
Copy.
Yeah, raining quite heavy now.
Okay, mate, still only that section of the track.
So in comes Lando Norris to get rid of those medium tyres, to put on the hards.
Hearing comments of increased rain at turn 8, Max.
Also here. Yeah, raining. Raining.
Okay, you let me know if you need to box to stay on the track, Max. It's as simple as that. Alonso first sector 8/10 slower.
Are you happy to do one more lap?
Yeah. Just let me know if anywhere is more. It's raining a lot now. Starts raining.
Okay, copy, mate. This is really not much on the radar, so we don't expect much from the radar.
So our forecast is saying it's light rain only.
Yeah, the hard tire is not the best, man. I don't know what to do.
Okay, let us know about wet weather tyres. There is rain incoming.
There's more coming.
Yeah, it's coming in. Turn 4 now.
Yeah, raining heavy on 7. Very slow.
Okay, is it still medium tyres though? Still medium tyres? Turn 7?
Yeah, just.
Stay up on one more. Stay up on one more in case it gets worse.
This is predicted to be light, but keep feeding back.
Let's just put the rain tires on. Super heavy here. This sector.
It's very wet here. It's turn 5 and 6. Can't get round on 6. Yeah, box this lap.
Yeah, we have to box. Stand by, Valtteri, stand by. The rest of the track is still dry. We will let you know late.
No, it's not dry. It's raining here.
Okay, Valtteri, you want to box?
Yeah, inter.
Okay, we go for inter. Box.
Box.
Okay, it's wet here. Only here.
Okay, understood.
It is all about driver instinct now. It is all about ability of reading the conditions now. How intense is the rain? How much are you prepared to risk?
Pass me outside the track.
Yeah, copy.
We are all going off, but it's okay.
Just call it.
See some inters ready.
Yeah, they're ready.
It's very wet here in sector 1. It may go red, I'm not sure. If someone crashes.
Stay out.
Box for inter, tyre switch inter, box, tyre switch inter.
Just have a think. If you think it's inter,
Depends on the forecast, mate.
we think it is a short shower on the radar.
Now I have to drive slow because my tyres are
Understood, Max. It might just be survival in that section of track, Max, if the rest of the track is dry.
Yeah, we are on the right tyre.
Copy. Good. Good. The pack is only 5 seconds ahead.
The Grand Prix has come alive.
So it's still dry in the pit lane.
This needs to go safety car. This is dangerous now.
Everyone behind you is slower than you.
Okay, good to know.
So just take care up the hill and through turn 3-4 as well.
Verstappen stayed out. Verstappen stayed out. You're still clear of Ocon's pit window. You're okay to stay out.
By how much? Because maybe with the race we are in the same conditions as them.
Yeah.
But with pressure over.
Yeah, we're on that. We're thinking about that. You're currently pulling away from Ocon.
Take two, Sainz versus Ocon to the Nouvelle chicane, no way by.
He's leaving me no space. You need to do something about it. We're gonna crash.
What is Perez doing? What the is he doing?
There's a few. I can't get around 6 to 1. We should box. Let's box.
And 2 cars on Inters, Bottas and Stroll. We are looking.
Yeah, 7 and 8. Probably good for Inters, but the rest of the circuit will be too dry, I guess. I don't know, mate.
Okay, mate. We're going to box this lap, please. Box this lap. And it will be for mediums. Box.
Now the lap times are 15 seconds a lap slower than what they were in the dry conditions.
Chris is sitting down here. We need to box. I told you we need a box.
Yeah, we need to box. I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Ocon is coming in, we believe. Staying out, if you're happy.
Yeah, one more lap.
Copy, that's good.
Is it gonna keep going?
If you want to keep going, stay out.
Is it gonna keep going, the rain?
Yes. Let's box, please. Box.
We sure?
Okay, Svante, box.
Okay, so check people for Inters and things like that.
Yeah, mate, we're watching. You're well clear of Ocon easy, so let's just warm these tyres up as safe as you can.
Russell is going for intermediate tyres. Russell is going to gamble.
Alonso has pitted for dry tyres. Understood, Max.
We need Inters.
Understood, Max. We are pitting for Inters. Don't stress. Fernando has pitted for dry tyres. Bring it into the pits.
Yeah, raining heavy in turn 3. Will be Inters, I think. Yeah, raining very heavy in 5. Inters, next lap.
Copy, mate. Understood. More rain here as well.
Any chance of rain stepping?
Difficult to say.
Oh, it's Sainz has gone deep at Mirabeau.
There will be box.
Copy.
Yellow ahead, turn 5, yellow ahead. Yellow ahead. Okay, we got car behind and then clear now. It's like Russell stopped exit 5. So yellow's here.
He came back, man. He came like a animal.
Yeah, I saw that. That's dangerous. Check rear right. Okay, firm. Still a lot can happen from here. Just get back in your rhythm.
I don't know, I can't turn the car.
Copy. So pull to the right.
The race leader comes into the pits to get rid of the medium tyres and put on the intermediates as he leaves the Grand Prix.
Box, Kev, box. Please confirm.
Are you sure? There might be a red flag, I guess.
If you're happy to stay out, stay out. Stay out.
Yeah, staying out.
I'm coming for Inters.
It's not stopping the rain.
Getting heavier.
Copy.
Open the gap.
And Alonso will stop again to go onto that intermediate tyre.
Okay, so you are clear behind. Everyone behind is coming. You've got Bottas ahead. The cars ahead of you are a lap down. You're still P2.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. The gamble didn't work.
So there's a lot of strategic errors there, not expecting the rain to come as quickly as it did.
So this is currently P5 still P5.
Now we're still 5.
The rain now looking very intense.
Yeah, it's too heavy now, man.
Understood. Box, Kev, box, please confirm.
Got.
Someone crashed.
Stay out. Sainz went off at turn 1. Other cars going off around the lap as well, including cars on Inters.
Driving around Monte Carlo is the supreme test of driving talent. Chuck the rain in and you are seeing superhuman performance just to keep it on the road.
Where's the safety car? Come on. Is he back on track or?
We're going to box for full wets, Kev. We're going to box for full wets. There's no sign of a safety car.
Shall we go for extreme? We got nothing to lose, right?
If you think it's white for extremes,
It's close.
stay out for now. So there's a cell over us. Might dry up a little bit after that. This is the worst it's going to be at the moment.
So at the moment everyone is on Inters except for Magnus and Hart.
With this rain going to clear, we could do full wets at the moment.
Lewis ahead is doing 43.3. Yeah, copy that. We are discussing.
Magnussen couldn't get back to the pits for full wets. Oh, wait, hold on. He might yet. He's reversing or trying to reverse at the Raskas.
Tyre 7, please, Kev. Tyre 7. Car is good. So these wets are cold,
sure.
Kev. There's the new spec wets.
Front wing.
Are you sure? Something else instead. You're actually sure?
Changing the nose.
God. I'm my most favorite. I can't believe you got it. Like that one so much.
I think I have to puncture.
Okay, box. Extremes or Inters?
Yeah, let's try in. Extreme.
This has been something truly special from Max Verstappen. The Dutch master has produced something special in the wet, in the dry. Max Verstappen wins the Monaco Grand Prix for surely one of his most satisfying victories in Formula One. 39 now on the board. He's the most winningest Red Bull driver in history.
Listen to this one.
Morning rain, greasy surface, mixed up grid. Anyone fancy the Turkish Grand Prix today? I know I do. Welcome along to the 8th World Championship Turkish Grand Prix. It's round 14 of 17 of this 2020 season, and this could be the day that the driver's title is decided as well. There is going to be a high chance of the safety car coming out at the end of this first lap. Let's keep our fingers crossed that we all get through safely. It's the Turkish Grand Prix, it's lights out and away we go. And they are crawling off the line, especially Max Verstappen. Hamilton, though, gets a really good start, passes 2 cars already. Stroll is in the lead, going into turn 1 ahead of his teammate, Sergio Perez. Hamilton on the inside of Daniel Ricciardo as Esteban Ocon and, crucially, Valtteri Bottas spin out and away onto the runoff area at turn 1. That is a horrendous start for Bottas, not what he would have wanted. Sebastian Vettel already ahead of Max Verstappen, and Alex Albon in the thick of it as well.
Verstappen moved away nicely, then just went absolutely nowhere. It was the 2 Renaults that made connection. I think it was Ricciardo just tapping his teammate round, and then Valtteri Bottas spinning in sympathy.
Albon going wide and off the track. Giovinazzi's got ahead. Kevin Magnussen's got ahead of Kimi Räikkönen, who's coming back at him as well. It's been a decent start in the McLaren, I think, for Lando Norris. There's Verstappen having a little look at Sebastian Vettel going into turn 7. But it's Lance Stroll and Sergio Perez 1-2 in these opening stages for Racing Point, and we can see riding on board with Verstappen just how treacherous it is.
And he fancies a bit of a run around the outside. I think the Red Bull will have more grip, but that start was perfect for Racing Point. We know they can fire their tyres up and get down the road, because at the moment Verstappen is on his back foot. He's lost a lot of ground. Brilliant start for Racing Point.
So Stroll leads Perez, and there going wide is Lewis Hamilton. I was going to say Stroll leads Perez, leads Hamilton, but no, leads Sebastian Vettel. What a start from him from 11th on the grid. Now Alex Albon is overtaking Lewis Hamilton as well. And Max Verstappen, I should say, is overtaking Lewis Hamilton as well. Here comes Alex Albon. He might fancy a run at the Mercedes going into the next corner, because he's got hotter tyres. Hamilton's been off the track. Down the inside goes Alex Albon. Does he take the place? Hamilton will try and fight it if he can, but he just hasn't got the grip to do so. He's skating around on thin ice at the moment as Albon manages to get past the Mercedes. Whoa. It's almost like he's missed a gear.
He's in first gear. It just almost stalled, didn't it?
Yeah.
Basically, he was running so few revs, maybe everything a little bit cold. It almost stalled on him. Look at that, that worked beautifully for Ricciardo. It's about to get spoiled a little bit, but I don't think it's his fault. Watch for Hamilton coming up our inside, and nothing Daniel could do about that, as I said, and Bottas really had to spin in sympathy.
So this is Valtteri Bottas, who had not 1, but 2 incidents on the opening lap. That's the first one that relegated him to the back, and I think down at turn 9, he also had another moment with Esteban Ocon as well.
Keep an eye on this. Short shift to get better traction. Change gear early, that means. And presumably Raikkonen's going to outbrake himself, is he?
Good stuff, Carlos. Big fan of your work.
And I have to say, Carlos's work was relatively straightforward there.
Ferrari are getting ready for a pit stop.
Yes,
I wonder if this is Charles Leclerc, because he's also in that part of a train of cars with Valtteri Bottas going absolutely nowhere.
Is that coming through Daniel Ricciardo, who hasn't pitted yet, and the speed in the pits is good enough to get Stroll in and out ahead of Ricciardo. As into the pits comes Sergio Perez. Verstappen stays out, Albon stays out. Intermediate tyres for Perez, problem with the front right. That's going to be a slower stop, 4.9 seconds. That's almost double the time that they would have wanted. How costly will that be for Sergio Perez, I wonder? Ted, are you watching Verstappen?
I am. Just beneath me. It needs to be absolutely perfect. It's a bit...
Believe in myself. Believe in yourself. My hero. I'm zero. I don't take it.
surface.
Luckiest I've ever got. you.